A few weeks ago, I made a video discussing why assassins are so effective in their methodology and why the way they choose to behave and act and how they choose to carry out their assassinations, especially in the past, was so effective. But that video focused mainly on pre-Altair times. For those who don't know, Altair kind of incited a huge change in the assassin order because he noticed that the assassins were operating too publicly by having fortresses and uniformed people walking around and being able to be seen, and it was causing too much of a liability and a danger to the Brotherhood and to the people that surrounded the Brotherhood. So when Altair became Grandmaster, he decided to strip the current operational standards for the assassins and go back to the ideology of Bayek, which was staying in the shadows, being less perceived, and assassinating silently, sparing anyone who you can. And a lot of you have asked me to make a part 2 discussing how assassins can still be effective if they've changed their strategy so much, if they've changed from striking fear through public assassinations and showing how menacing they are and showing how the people that they kill in front of are not powerless against the oppressors that they kill. How is it that they're still effective at what they do in the modern world? And I want to explain essentially why. Because as society progressed through the Renaissance into the Industrial Age, the landscape of power shifted dramatically, and who you needed to be around and who you needed to be seen by also shifted dramatically. Dense urban environments, burgeoning technology, and global politics has created a new playground and a new battleground for the assassins. And because the assassins have been along for so many centuries, they have a very good understanding that to adapt is to survive. You cannot use the same techniques that you used in ancient Egypt in revolutionary Paris if you're trying to enact social change. So let's look at the more modern ways that assassins are acting that allows them to be so effective while still keeping their tenants alive and well. The first thing is they are still incredibly lethal, even more so if you take into account their technology and their advancements in weaponry. Assassins at the core of the ideology still believe in necessary assassinations, lethal removal of their opponents at the cost of perhaps their morality. And this is something that I've discussed in a lot of other videos, but I don't think that assassins are necessarily the most morally upstanding group of people, but rather people who have such a strong ideology of how they think society should be like that they're willing to sacrifice those morals in exchange for that social change. Assassins, no matter what time in history, are incredibly lethal and definitely prioritize the idea of assassinations and killing their targets. The main thing that's changed is essentially how many people they kill to reach that target and how they kill that target. They are no longer interested in extremely public assassinations that strikes fear into the hearts of people. The reason why is because as society progresses, people become less and less accustomed to violence. It doesn't mean they're not used to violence, of course. Even in the more modern games, like in Assassin's Creed 3, we have a war. In Assassin's Creed Black Flag, we've got pirates killing everyone, and the revolution in France for Assassin's Creed Unity is one of the bloodiest times in recent history. But at the end of the day, the trend line is still going down in terms of how much people are accustomed to violence. Therefore, if you see someone who is publicly assassinating someone and then can get away with it and escape without anyone ever catching him, that is not someone who inspires you or incites you to rebel against people. It's actually someone you'd be probably very terrified of. Assassins wouldn't have a lot of public support if they went around acting like they did back when the brutality and the barbarism of ancient societies was much more normalized. So there you already have an initial incentive for assassins to start killing their targets privately, which is that there's no real benefit to killing these people publicly. There's no real way you're going to incite people to fight for their own individuality or fight with you against the oppressed. You're kind of just going to scare them and come across as terrorists. And it kind of raises the question, are assassins technically terrorists? And we can talk about that in a different video because I'm not going to go into that now. But then you want to go a layer deeper, which is who is really calling the shots and who is really enacting change in modern societies. In these modern settings, assassins like Jacob and Evie Fry in Victorian London or Arno in revolutionary Paris had to adapt by embedding themselves within the movements and machinations of their times. They weren't just fighters anymore. These assassins aren't just weaponized humans. They have to become influencers, shaping political outcomes through stealth and also careful manipulation rather than just brute force. You couldn't just run up and assassinate a target and let everything unfold around you. Assassins have to shift into an order that calculates and manipulates the environment around them through not just force but also political nuance. The effectiveness of modern assassins doesn't just come with the ability to fight anymore. It stems from a deep understanding of social and political fabrics, and this is something that's very well represented in Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed Unity. By influencing the right person, intercepting a crucial piece of information, or even kind of redirecting funds or information or evidence, they continue to steer the course of history, quietly but decisively. And this is the key change that makes assassins still successful in the modern day. And the best example that I can give you is Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed Unity. If you notice, in these later games, assassins are much more involved with politics and with politicians. Connor becomes close with Washington and a lot of the founding fathers, and that's one of the reasons why he can become so influential outside of the battlefield, outside of assassinating these Templars that he's hunting down. And similar to that, Arno, the mentor of Arno's Brotherhood, is Mirabeau, who was a famous politician who almost actually achieved what assassins have been hoping for I don't know how many centuries, which is peace through a truce with the Templars. So you can see here consider how Arno's mentor was a politician in a way that no real other mentor was. He was almost a politician first and an assassin second, because he doesn't look like a standard assassin. He's out of shape, he doesn't wear hoods, he doesn't wear capes, he dresses as a politician, and he spends his time making alliances furthering the ideologies of the assassins, but in the political realm. And when you look at the types of missions that Arno goes on, a lot of the times he has to do things that don't involve killing anyone. It involves deleting evidence or finding evidence or making investigations to frame this person or accuse that other person. There's a shift in the priorities that assassins have, where they have to understand the playing field that they are now on, where killing people is no longer sufficient. You have to make sure that this very delicate balance of power between a lot of people who have fractionalized levels of power. In ancient times, it used to be one or two people that have complete power over the city, over the kingdom, over the country. Whatever degree of size geographically that you have a proportionally sized power figure. However, in the modern days, through democracy, through different types of political structures that fractionalizes powers to more people that have less power, killing one person doesn't swing any situation in the favor of the assassins if it's not backed up by some sort of political infrastructure from an opposing side that is ready to be set in place when these assassinations are made. The evolution of tactics and tools shows us that assassins have mastered the art of change, which is the most important thing that they can do to not only survive, but thrive in modern environments. They've moved from wielding swords and killing people in public to moving to the shadows and leveraging invisible weapons of the modern era, proving that true power doesn't really lie within just the physical ability that you have as an assassin, which is what most people think of when they think of an assassin. They think of this amazingly agile and capable fighter who can perform any sort of assassination task that he's involved in. But when you look at the real modern assassins like Ezio, Connor, and Arno, they all had a second side to them. They all had to be soft-core politicians who were close and intertwined with hardcore politicians whose main function was to be in politics. Assassins cannot really function without people in high places influencing society from a more official standpoint. And all of this is why assassins are so effective. The shift in power dynamics and influences in a more modern world, even though there is still public violence like in AC3 with the war, Black Flag with pirates, and Unity and Syndicate with the Revolution, there is a shift into political circles that has to be made by the assassins to make friends with higher circles and start influencing from there. Therefore, to protect their public image, assassins are not only tasked to kill their targets, they have to do so silently and in private so no one knows they did it, because if not, assassins would very quickly be feared by the general public, and no politician would want to be seen with them if they were known as an actual order like they were before Altair's time. It is no longer useful for your group to be labeled a terrorist or assassins or freedom fighters, as it doesn't incite change and it fuels distrust and fear against you. Politicians and public relations becomes increasingly important, which is why Ezio found Machiavelli so useful. Connor had George Washington, Arno had Mirabeau, and all these things, they're not really replacing the function of field assassins. Field assassins are still being sent out to bring peace to their targets. However, there is something to be said that it cannot be an independent existence, that of an assassin who spends his time killing people. There has to be deep and official infrastructure outside of the Assassin Brotherhood to work in harmony with the Assassin's Brotherhood's operations. Not only that, they have a need for staying silent and staying in the shadows, because it creates a danger the more surveillance there is in the world. The more that you have a flowing of news and information in the world, which just exponentially grows as history advances. Being known as an Assassin Brotherhood, being able to be recognized, is not something that's going to be good for you. So assassins were able to recognize, especially Altair, who kind of incited these changes, and that's why they managed to survive and stay so successful throughout these years. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in other ways to be more immersed in this Assassin's Creed universe, you can watch this video now where I talk about immersive ways to play Assassin's Creed. Thank you.